He's going to be walking out.
Oh Lord, I look like a Hank.
You didn't get enough sleep.
That's for sure. What's up, Yang Gang? So we are here at the Public Library in Nashua, New Hampshire. And we are waiting for Andrew Yang. Bated breath. We just got here. Oh my gosh, y'all. It is crazy. The snow and the weather. What did you think of the drive here?
Not perfect. But we slid a couple of times. It was terrifying, but we made it, and we got one more event after this, as long as we can make it in Salem.
Yeah, well, there's actually 2 events, but we don't know if we're gonna make the 3rd event and watch something epic will happen.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
I was at the Hanover rally. I asked the question about the Yang Media blackout. I'm a huge fan of your channel.
Thank you.
So, hello everyone, the #1 under 18 Yang supporter who won't be able to vote in the 2020 election here.
Re-election 2024.
I'm writing a question right now based on the requests to hold the people in Tom Perez's. Oh man, I'm so bad right now. But
Yeah, it's kind of crazy what they're doing.
it is.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you so much.
All right, so Yang Gang.
That was Ellis. If you remember him from the teenager asking the question about the Yang Media blackout, it's one of our previous videos.
He was the one that asked that question, and now he's here in Nashua to support Yang. So y'all make sure that you tweet it out, get it out there, tell everybody, tell your grandma. We brave this for y'all. Love you, Yang Gang. Glad you're here.
And we did bring little Yang Gang today.
Did not
He
bring
didn't
little
want to
Yang
come at all, but he's also with my sister having a good time. So
Thank you, Corey. Shout outs to her for watching Little Yang Gang. Can y'all hear us okay? Are we talking too soft? Because you know we don't want to be too loud in here, but we want to make sure it's coming through.
where does Tom Perez live?
Where does Tom Perez live? I don't know. I don't know. And you know what? I gotta watch what I say now on YouTube because they'll rip your videos down, rip your channel down for saying like the least little thing now. So we gotta watch what we say. Like I don't even know if I can spout off about Elizabeth Warren anymore, y'all. Kind of sucks.
They're cracking down on what they call harassment, but they're really
Free speech.
yeah, it's not really harassment that they're targeting.
I mean, they're yanking videos that for like very little reason, and so yeah, YouTube does need to chill. Hell, I hate autocorrect. It drives me crazy. You should see some of my tweets sometimes. It's like, what?
Y'all, we are also working on a video about change banking. So
Change banking. Hopefully, we want to have that video out today, but we've been running behind. I had to get up at 6:30 this morning to make it to the DMV in Vermont, in Montpelier, and man.
and the roads were bad then too.
Oh my gosh, y'all, it's so stressful driving in this stuff, and you'll slide around a little bit, and catch traction again. Y'all make sure you tweet it out. I know it's a Monday.
What is today?
Today's Monday. What do you think our Q4 numbers are going to be? Well, anything more than 10 million is good because 10 million was what we hit in Q3. However, I think it's going to be around 15 million if we can get this 3 million in. We got to get this $3 million in.
I think it's going to be closer to 20.
Think so?
Yeah. But you know, if it's not 30, we're not getting Yang tattoos.
I'll bet you some push-ups.
I can't even do a push-up.
Yeah, I think it's going to be around 15 million, something like that.
So, at the risk of starting a stampede, other than these 4, we're going to remove the reserve for the rest of our, we had some people who had, 4 chamber members.
Somebody's
who had,
talking.
signed up in advance. We've taken those off, so they need to be here on time. These are the only ones that I'm going to continue to hold reserve. If there are others, feel free to throw yourself in.
Somebody said, go say hi to Matt and Zach and Matt. They ain't here. don't think. I don't see.
I know they were in South Carolina the other day.
It may be here. We will say hi. I'll give him a hug. Ask him how the hell they get stuff up so fast.
Right?
God, it drives us crazy, y'all.
That's why we haven't really put up a lot of videos of Andrew Yang in the news,
Yeah.
unless we feel like it's awesome. I don't know.
Because Zach and Matt are so good at what they do, and they do a good job, and they always get the videos up fast. So shout outs to Zach and Matt.
Steve. I feel like we're so far away.
Mr. New Hampshire Politics himself has just arrived. Mr. Warm-Up guy.
They posted a live stream reminder.
Zach and Matt.
Futuristic technology. I don't see them. Where are they? I honestly don't remember what they look like because I haven't watched enough of their videos to know.
Yes, please share. Get it out there, y'all. We only got 52 people on there. I know we
They're
can do
all
better
on
than
Zach
that.
and Matt live stream.
They ain't on. Zach and Matt had this live stream up yesterday.
They already got it up. Like, how do they do
They
that?
already got it up.
Time travel.
Yes, we are going to be at the New Year's party in Nashua. It's going to be awesome. We're going to cover that event for y'all. Y'all are going to be there too. What you think about that?
There are a lot of events coming up. We'll have some more tomorrow.
Yeah, those tickets were $60.
Yeah. It all went to Andrew Yang, though.
For sure, yeah, for sure. So we don't mind that at all.
So yeah.
Colin says, see us there. All right. Mr. Draper, I think. Mr. Draper. We will definitely see you. They're like moving chairs around and stuff in here.
Playing musical chairs. It's a fun game to get the party going, you know?
Yeah. And while I am seeing a small amount of math apparel, I'm not seeing a whole lot. And you know the Yang Gang is going to be repping the math apparel. For sure. So I'm thinking that this is largely undecided here. That's really good. Really good. For sure. Look for the guy with the super long blonde hair. Okay.
Should be easy to spot then.
Actually, you look for us. You look for us. We'll be set up somewhere. You saw on the Yang Facebook page.
Something.
Craig Rogers, New Hampshire.
Craig Rogers. Where's Craig?
Wait, that's one of our friends.
Yeah. He's always doing the super chat and everything.
He is doing the super chat. And any of y'all out there who feel so inclined, we appreciate any super chats. And you got some electronium.
I'm electronium mining. I get like 30 cents a week, man.
I don't even know what that means.
It's kind of like Bitcoin mining,
like
but it's in the early stages, yeah. But you got to use a diamond pickaxe or it'll break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you know I'm from the country, so I ain't that.
I think there was like 4 or 5.
So Yang Gang, y'all make sure that you tweet it out. Mommy
Sorry, there's a baby over there.
Mommy Yang Gang's looking at babies.
So cute. I might have to buy another baby with my friend dividend. I'm kidding. Joking. I don't buy children.
What are you even saying right now?
I don't know. I'm hungry. I'm really hungry. I don't know what that's to do with babies, but
Yeah, I think so.
Ted is looking for you guys. I don't know who Ted is, but
Ted?
we appreciate Ted looking for us.
What do you mean he's looking for us? He's here?
Who is Ted?
I don't know.
I mean, if you have
Ted
Who's
who?
Ted?
or something, then you could just like put her next.
We don't need any maple syrup. There's more maple syrup up here than there are mooses up here, y'all. I ain't seen a moose one, and I've seen 20,000 things of maple syrup.
Where's Craig in the chat? I didn't see him.
Oh, I didn't see him either. So, y'all make sure that you Twitch. That is. Somebody.
We don't have Twitch. I don't even know how to do that.
We have YouTube. Shout out to our 10,000 subscribers.
Yay.
What?
Thank
Are you kidding me?
Let's get all 10,000 of them
That
right
is
here,
so
right now.
cool. He's doing that great everywhere. Thanks to Grassroots Gang Gang. Well, you know, that is much appreciated. We're up here working hard for y'all in this early voting state. We got.
You're all reserved.
We're all reserved. We're just reserved.
You're standing
Do
up
I
here
ha-
with the media.
I actually, yes, someone Amazon wishlist me a pair of pants.
I think you bought a pair, and so with the donations for the Russ Needs Pants hashtag.
Russ bought one pair of dress pants from the thrift shop, but they're nice. I don't buy messed up pants from the thrift shop.
Thrift shops got the best stuff.
Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. So we're waiting on Andrew Yang to get here. He should be here any minute, y'all. And this is an event at the Nashua Library, and it looks like largely undecided voters. We got a gang of media here. Check it out.
Always. Whoa, take them for a ride.
So that's where Andrew's going to be speaking. Oh,
It
we got.
looks a lot further away than it actually is.
Yeah, I don't know why it looks like it's 18 miles away, y'all, but
Zoom in.
I don't know if zooming in would.
Oh. Does that make it really blurry, or does that okay?
Looks like all of them, all of the local New Hampshire stations, anyway. I think.
I feel like we're a little crooked. I don't know. Just turn it around.
What new Yang Gang song?
Let's zoom out. Everybody's gonna think something's wrong with you.
There is something wrong with it. So, anyway, y'all make sure that you tweet this out. You know, we got to start the live stream a little bit early so that we can make sure that we get to get everybody on here, get everybody a chance to get here.
What time is it?
It is lunchtime.
It's lunchtime. Yeah.
It's actually about 2 o'clock.
That's what time it's supposed to start. Let me stand on my tippy toes.
Stand up on your tippy toes.
For the fire code, so you have a seat next to you that's vacant. You want to raise your hand and let as many more people, unless you're holding for someone that you know is on their way, because they're going to get stopped out there. Otherwise, everyone will have anyone else who's not already here, so we'll have to watch from outside. Good?
All right. So we have just been informed, y'all, that we are at capacity. We are at the fire code. And people are going to be, people are starting to be turned away. That's how much this is growing, Gang Gang, here in New Hampshire. It is full. They are at fire code and they are starting to turn people away. And there are people showing up. Thank you, Michael Penoyer. Shout out to you. We
Always
appreciate
there
it.
for us. Thank you.
Always there for us, Michael Penoyer. Thank you. Shout out to you. Sure. That helps. That
He
helps.
is one of our executive producers.
He is one of our executive producers. Sure is.
Which means he supports us on Patreon. If y'all haven't been over to our Patreon page, we have the links in all of our other videos.
We do. You go to any of our other videos, any donation links that you need to donate to this channel to help us get to these events. Pay babysitters, get gas and food, and all that stuff.
Yang.
The market values us at zero, y'all. Y'all are the only value that we have is to the Yang Gang and covering Andrew Yang for y'all, and Yanging people, and turning that into New Hampshire votes. So if you can donate, please do. Tweet it out. Let's get some people on here. 109 people. We can do better than that. So we're gonna turn this around. Let y'all see some people for a second. See, if y'all notice, like, several on the back row have math hats. But if you look at this crowd, y'all. This crowd is largely, I would say, probably about 80%. Looks like 80% undecided.
That's our guest from Yang Apparel versus no Yang Apparel.
Yeah. But see, here's the thing. You know as well as I do that the Yang Gang's they're gonna rock the math hats. They're gonna rock the Yang Apparel. And because we know how desperate it is. We know that Andrew Yang is not going to get fair media coverage. We know that Andrew Yang is not going to get the shout outs on television that some of these other candidates get. We already know that. So we know how important it is to wear these math hats and to wear Yang apparel. So we're not going home. We're not leaving the house without it. Right? I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong. Shout me down if I'm wrong. Y'all put it in the chat. Shout me down if I'm wrong. But, you know, we know how important it is. And so that's why I'm saying this place is probably about 80% undecided, y'all.
Yeah, we should interview someone. If we can pick someone out and it's not too loud. We also, I have no idea what happens with the microphone or if it even works at the moment, so it's a little harder to do interviews.
Thank you, T. Jones.
Thank you.
You're amazing.
Without
You're
microphone.
amazing. We appreciate that so much. It goes a long way, y'all. Every dollar helps.
Like the little dancing guy.
Dancing guy, yeah. But we were talking about the microphone. We're actually trying to get more like an interview microphone. You know, it's got that you can whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Something that's gonna pick up, you know, when we're interviewing people. So we should actually probably see if we can't put that on a wish list or something.
True, we could do that.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna put it on an Amazon wish list, and maybe somebody will wish it to us.
Wish it to us.
Yeah. Well, you gotta think, man. What is the stat that Andrew uses? That every New Hampshire voter, everybody in early voting states are worth 1,000 California votes. That's how important these early voting states are. So the fact that there's 80% of the people here who are undecided, Joseph Z, thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate that very much. The fact that there's like 80% here that's undecided, how many people do you reckon are here?
What's the fire code? It's one less than that.
For sure.
They actually are enforcing.
They wear their Yang apparel every day too. We all do, because we know how important it is. If we're out in public, we're rocking our math hats.
Where is Yang Stream, Zach and Matt show?
I don't know,
Are they here?
but we love you.
Because I don't.
We appreciate you watching this channel if you want to. I mean, if you want to check out Zach and Matt, they're cool too. We love them. Yes, hit the thumbs up. Come on, why is there 134 people in here and only 30?
Zach and Matt Stream.
There's 134 people here, but we only got 30 thumbs up.
Oh, I see what you're saying now. Okay. Don't fight with
Polls. The polls is so ridiculous what the DNC is doing. I don't know if anybody out there is good at research, but if you could look up how many polls came out at the same time during the last election cycle, last presidential election cycle,
Like from 4 years ago.
from 4 years ago, then we might be able to tell, you know, if the DNC is trying to screw us a little bit or what the deal is. Because, you know, they've already got the ones on the stage that they wanted. You know, I'm trying to get away from the words that I cut my
One state.
Well, you can still see your face though.
What state is that?
I don't even know.
So we appreciate each and every one of you being here. Oh, okay. So, well,
I gotta fix this. It's crooked. I can't. It's already
I'm
as
trying to
long.
fix it, but
It's crooked. Isn't it crooked?
I can't see your face. See, if we could just keep your side lower.
Well, he's supposed to already be here, but the weather is really bad, so I would be surprised if that would cause him to get here a little bit later.
Oh my gosh, y'all, the weather here is just, we saw at least half a dozen cars that had slid around in the snowbanks, being hauled off. It was crazy. And I'm like, why are these people driving so slow, man? Like, golly, this is creeping. I'm like trying to get to an Andrew Yang event so I can live stream for the Yang game.
That's why it took us almost 3 hours to get.
Oh my gosh, 3 hours. That's slow people.
We only tried to slide into like guardrails and medians a few times. You know?
We didn't try to
Only
slide.
a few times.
If we wanted to slide into it, right? It's supposed to be started now.
Yeah. So any
So
minute.
any minute. Geez, CRT, calm down. Can we not get some love on here on the live stream before Andrew Yang comes? We know y'all came for Yang, but geez.
I mean,
She's pretty too, at least.
Not as pretty as Andrew Yang, I guess.
I mean, what does that even mean? Are you mad? Are you still salty because he hugged me?
No, it was an accident, and then he gave me an extra hug the next day.
Or
So
was it?
it just cracked my neck.
Been that fair. So, been up since 6:30 this morning, been on the go. Already been to say hi to Ted from Yang Street. Are you Ted from Yang Street? I'm sorry. Are you Ted from Yang Street?
Are you Ted? We're looking for Ted.
We're just, like, they're telling me to say hi to him, and I'm like, I don't even know who this person is. So I figured I'd ask.
Is that Ted over there? He's got a phone too. That might be Ted. What's Ted look like?
What's Ted look like?
Is that tall one Ted? Is that Ted?
Is that Ted over there?
The plaid. Yep, the flannel. Yeah.
Ted has
That's him. That's him.
Okay. Well,
So should I just like yell Ted across the room? I mean,
so it's Ted from Yang Street?
what is he?
Yang Street is like that's the Twitch thing, right?
I'm confused. I don't know what Yang Stream is, y'all. So
Shout out
like,
to Germany.
y'all could tell me what that means.
Ted from Yang Street. Say, hey Ted, long time no see. Hey Ted. Ted, long time no see.
He's gonna come talk to us later.
Maybe we have seen him before. Some of these
We need a lot of people. We try
need a lot of
to
people.
keep everyone straight.
And he was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
thanks.
What is Yang Stream? What is that?
It's a Twitch thing. Zach and Matt stream from them too. Oh, okay.
So what should I ask Andrew today?
Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to open those doors up, so hopefully people out there can hear what's going to happen. Welcome, everyone, to this first in the 2020 Gateway to the Election Presidential Campaign Series, presented through a collaborative partnership between the Greater Nashua Chamber of Commerce, Riviera University's President Circle, and the Telegraph. I'm Tracy Hall, President and CEO of the Greater Nashua Chamber of Commerce. It's my pleasure to welcome all of our business, civic, and community members to today's event. We appreciate your support and applaud you for educating yourselves about the important choices we'll all make on February 11th. Our goal for this series is simple: to bring our presidential candidates to Nashua, to keep you informed, to get a deeper sense of their stance on business community topics, and to prepare you to cast your most informed vote on primary day. As we begin our program, I would like to ask that you take a moment to check that your cell phones, I'm not going to tell you to turn them off, because I'm sure you don't want to take pictures, but at least put them in silent mode so they don't go off throughout the course of the afternoon. I do want to recognize youth people, former elected officials who are with us. Former Nashua Mayor John Lee Lozo, thank you so much for joining us. Gentlemen, I'll miss somebody. I know State Representative and newly elected member of the Board of Aldermen, Skip Cleaver, is here. There's Skip. Elected officials I saw walk in, but if I missed you. Brandon Laws. Oh, Brandon Laws, our alderman. Where's Brandon? There you are. I'd also like to thank our corporate sponsor of this series, Fidelity Investments. Joe Murray unfortunately was not able to join us due to some weather-related things, as you can all probably imagine. Fidelity is a strong and very active member of our chamber and of the greater national community in general, providing both funding and feet on the street to help dozens of agencies across the region each year. Our city is fortunate to have institutions of the quality and history of our gateway to the election partners. Riviera University has seen great growth under the exemplary leadership of Sister Paula Marie Bewley and is blessed with dedicated men and women who share their time and talents through the President's Circle Council. The Telegraph, a Nashua institution since 1832, rounds out our partnership, ensuring that our citizenry is engaged and educated through their coverage of the greater Nashua region. And I want to personally thank the publisher of the Telegraph, Heather Henline, and the Telegraph's editor, Matt Burgett, for what they've done to help put the series together. And finally, we're very grateful to Jennifer McCormick, director of the National Public Library. A little aside, my favorite place in the entire city, because I love libraries, for hosting us here at the library this afternoon. And I'm sorry that we couldn't get a few more people in here without venturing the wrath of the fire marshal. We're just about to get started, but just a few words on the format for this afternoon. So following Mr. Yang's remarks, I'll present a series of questions on issues that are important to our gateways to the election partners. And then I'll take questions from the audience as time permits until, I know we started a little late, so we'll see if we can speak a little bit past 3 depending on the candidate's schedule. We are looking forward to an informative conversation today, and of course, to your courtesy and respect as we go through the program. Now, a brief introduction, you probably all know this, but just to be on the record, Andrew Yang is an American entrepreneur, philanthropist, author, and lawyer. He is the founder of Venture for America, a nonprofit organization that focuses on creating jobs in struggling American cities. In 2012, the Obama administration selected him as a champion of change, and in 2015 as a presidential ambassador for global entrepreneurship. In late 2017, Mr. Yang announced his run for the presidency under the slogan, "Make America Think Harder," math, which I love, along with his defining public policy proposal of universal basic income, which is a supplemental income offered to American adults to prepare them for the economic challenges incurred by artificial intelligence and automation in the job market. Mr. Yang is a 1996 graduate of Brown University, where he earned a degree in political science, and a 1999 graduate of Columbia University School of Law. He and his wife Evelyn have 2 sons and live in New York City. With that, I would like to invite Mr. Yang to the podium to learn more about what he has for us.
This my mic? Oh, yes. Voice amplification. It's so great to be back here in New Hampshire. Tracy, you missed the most important thing. I graduated from Phillips Exeter Academy in 1992. That's a pretty tepid applause. People here are like, PEA. It's okay. I was invited back to speak at PEA a number of months ago. And when I spoke, I said, this is my first time back since I graduated because I didn't enjoy myself here. And the student body erupted in applause. I felt really bad. That wasn't the reaction I was going for. And as Tracy said, after I graduated from Exeter, I went to Brown and then Columbia, and then I became an unhappy lawyer in New York City for 5 months. And that sometimes gets a laugh from people. And I left the firm to try and start a business. How many of you, because this is the Chamber of Commerce, how many of you have started a business or organization or club or a list? So if you have your hand up, you know 2 things. Number 1, it's much harder than anyone lets on. And number 2, when someone asks you how it's going, what do you say? Great. Everything's always going great. My business went great until it failed. My parents told people I was still a lawyer, because it was a much easier story. But I'd been bitten by the bug. I worked at another small company and then another, and then I became the head of an education company that grew to become #1 in the United States and was bought by a bigger company. 2009 it's a decade ago. I can't believe it's already been 10 years. That was a very tough time in much of the country. How many of you were here in New Hampshire 10 years ago? And how was that time for you in Nashua in 2009? You're laughing. Were you the mayor then? I just want to commend all of the elected officials and former elected officials, because here in New Hampshire in particular, it's a labor of love. You're certainly not doing it for the money or the glory. And I tell people who run for local office, I believe it's harder than running for president, because people know where you live. So the financial crisis 10 years ago racked many of our communities. And I saw this unfold, and I thought I had some insight as to why the economy had collapsed. It was because so many of the wannabe whiz kids I'd gone to Exeter and Brown and Columbia with had gone to Wall Street and helped create derivatives and mortgage-backed securities and these exotic financial instruments. And so I thought, well, that's a disaster, that's a train wreck, if that's where our energies are going. So I imagined what I would want our energies to go towards instead. And the vision I came up with was to head to a city like Detroit or Cleveland or Birmingham or Providence and help grow a company to create jobs. So I started a nonprofit called Venture for America, started calling wealthy friends, asking them this question: do you love America? The smart among them said, what does it mean if I say yes, Andrew? And then I said at least $10,000. So raised a couple $100,000, which grew to the millions, helped create thousands of jobs in 15 cities around the country. And as Tracy said, I was honored by the Obama administration multiple times. I got to bring my wife to meet the president, so my in-laws were very excited about me that week. But unfortunately, during my travels, I started having this sinking feeling where for any job that my organization was helping to create, many of these communities were losing dozens, even hundreds of jobs. I started to feel like my work was pouring water into a bathtub that had a giant hole ripped in the bottom. But I was still surprised when Donald Trump became our president in 2016. How did you all react when he won? Tears, devastated, disbelief. To me, it was a giant red flag that tens of millions of our fellow Americans decided to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star as president. And even if you were devastated or cried, we all have family members or friends or neighbors who were very excited about his victory. I started to dig into why I thought he won. If you turned on cable news today, why would you think that Donald Trump's our president? Facebook, racism, Russia, Hillary Clinton perhaps, emails. But someone shouted out the economy. That's closer to the truth. When I dug into the numbers, we've automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs over the past number of years. And where were those jobs? Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Iowa, all the swing states that Donald Trump needed to win and did win. And if you doubt this, if you go through the voter district data, you see that there's a straight line up between the adoption of industrial automation in a voting district and the movement towards Trump. This happened in New Hampshire, but it happened earlier. You all lost over 12,000 manufacturing jobs in the northern part of the state. And when you go to those towns, you see that many of those towns have never recovered. That after the factory or the plant closed, then the shopping district closed, and the population shrank. When I was in Detroit, in Cleveland, and St. Louis, you saw a lot of the same things. We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, because what happened to the manufacturing jobs is not stopping there. It's now heading to retail, call centers, fast food, truck driving, and on through the economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in New Hampshire? And why are those stores closing? Amazon, that's right, one word answer. Amazon's soaking up $20 billion in business every single year. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? Zero. That's your math, New Hampshire. 20 billion out, zero back. 30% of your stores and malls close. Most common job in the economy is retail clerk. Average retail clerk's a 39-year-old woman making between $9 and $10 an hour. So if her store closes, what is her next opportunity going to be? How many of you have seen a self-serve kiosk in a fast food restaurant, like a McDonald's? Every location in the country in the next 2 years. Starting in the front of the house, they're gonna move to the back of the house. When you call the customer service line of a big company and you get the bot or software, I'm sure you do the exact same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human, until you get someone on the line, right? How many of you do that? Yeah, the software is terrible. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software is gonna sound like this. Hello, Andrew. How's it going? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, delightful. You might not even realize it's software. What is that going to mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work at call centers right now making $14 an hour? How many of you know a truck driver here in New Hampshire? It's the most common job in 29 states. There are 3.5 million truckers. And my friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. They say they're 98% of the way there. A self-driving truck just took 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania about 2 weeks ago, totally autonomous. Why butter? I have no idea. But you can actually look that up. You can just like robot butter truck and it will pop up. What does this mean for the 3.5 million Americans who drive a truck for a living, or the 7 million Americans who work in truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal every day? Despair. These are the forces that are tearing our country apart. Many Americans feel themselves getting left behind and pushed to the sideline. Corporate profits are at record highs today, also at record highs in the United States of America. Stress, financial insecurity. How many of you all are college students? I sense many of you. Student loan debt, record highs. Not normal. Even suicides and drug overdoses. And unfortunately, New Hampshire is one of the epicenters of the opiate epidemic in the country. But 8 Americans are dying of drugs every hour in this country right now. So these are the things that people are experiencing on the ground, and it's only going to accelerate as artificial intelligence leaves the lab and starts hitting the economy in earnest. This is not just a blue-collar problem. Artificial intelligence will be able to do the work of bookkeepers, accountants, radiologists, even attorneys. Right now, software can edit a contract more quickly and error-free and certainly inexpensively than the most experienced human lawyer. We're in the midst of this economic transformation, and for whatever reason, we're scapegoating immigrants for things that immigrants have next to nothing to do with. So my first move was still not to run for president, because I'm not a crazy person. I went to Washington, D.C., and I sat down with our leaders, and I said, what are we going to do to help our people manage this transition? What do you think the folks in D.C. said to me when I said, what are we going to do?
They're going to impeach Trump.
We don't know, nothing. The 3 answers I got most frequently were, number 1, Andrew, we cannot talk about this. Someone suggested Americans wouldn't understand it anyway. Number 2, we should study this further. Number 3, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future, which sounds very responsible. How many of you heard a politician say something like that at some point? Yeah, we all have. But then I said, look, I checked the studies. Do you all want to guess how effective the government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs?
15%.
I'm anchoring you low because it is low. 0 to 15% success rates, total dud. And when I said this to the folks in DC, one of them said, well, I guess we'll get better at it. The truth is that the folks in DC will do well whether we do well or not. The feedback mechanism is broken. It's one reason why Donald Trump's our president today. And one person in DC leveled with me and said something that brought me here to you all. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here will do anything about this because Washington, DC is fundamentally a town of followers, not leaders. And the only way we will do something about this is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down in our heads. That was over 2 years ago. I said, I will be back with the wave. I accept that challenge. And I stand before you today, I'm 5th in the polls to be the nominee of the Democratic Party. We raised $10 million last quarter in increments of only $30 each, so my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. And that 10 million, 0 corporate PAC money, all people powered, all grassroots. We just announced today that we're going to do better than that in this coming quarter. We are growing while other campaigns are shrinking because we are solving the actual problems that got Donald Trump elected, and we have real solutions that would help move the country forward. So what are the solutions? If you're here today, and I appreciate you braving the elements and saying, I'm gonna go see Andrew Yang, even though it's yucky, because it's pretty gross out. Even, you know, I grew up in New Hampshire too, so. If you were here today, at some point you heard that this guy wants to give every American $1,000 a month. Remember the first time you heard that? And the first time you heard that, you were like, ha ha, that's a gimmick, that's too good to be true, that will never happen. But this is not my idea, and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country. He called it the citizen's dividend. Martin Luther King fought for it in the 1960s, called it the guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. And it is what he was fighting for when he was assassinated in 1968. I had the privilege of sitting with Dr. King's son in Atlanta, Martin Luther King III, who said, this is what my father was fighting for when he was killed. 1,000 economists endorsed it in the 60s. It passed the US House of Representatives twice in 71 under Richard Nixon. It's called the Family Assistance Plan, where it set an income floor for all Americans. And then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that, New Hampshire?
Alaska.
And how does Alaska pay for it?
Oil.
And what is the oil of the 21st century?
Technology.
Technology, AI, software, self-driving cars and trucks. A study just came out that said that our data is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail? We laugh, but where did the data checks go? Facebook, Amazon, Google, the mega tech companies that are paying zero or near zero in taxes. That is the game, New Hampshire. Our communities are getting sucked dry and depleted. We're looking around wondering where the value went. And the biggest winners in the 21st century economy are paying zero in taxes. What we have to do is we have to get our fair share, your fair share. Make sure Amazon, this trillion-dollar tech company, actually is paying taxes. And equally important, we have to put that value into our hands, into your hands, the hands of the American people. Build a trickle-up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up. Because if we put this $1,000 a month into your hands, where will the money go in real life? I'm gonna guess a lot of it's gonna stay right here in Nashua or New Hampshire, right? It's be good for the Chamber of Commerce. Run a business here, it'd be like, wow, I think people might be patronizing my business a little more often. But the money would go into car repairs you've been putting off, and daycare expenses, and Little League signups, and local nonprofits, and religious organizations. It would create a sustainable path for rural parts of the state that right now are struggling to find it. It would make our people stronger, healthier, mentally healthier, less stressed out. For the students who are laboring under tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt, it would help to clear that debt. Though I want to do more to clear that debt independent of giving you $1,000 a month. Because that 1.6 trillion is out of control and it's immoral the way it was generated. This $1,000 a month would help us manage the greatest economic transformation in our country's history. I am friendly with some of the leading technologists in the country. They tell me, hey Andrew, I've seen what's in the lab, and when it comes out, it's going to be a bigger problem than anyone realizes. You know how that conversation never goes? Andrew, I've seen what's in the lab, and everything will be fine. That's not the end of that thought. The more someone knows, the more concerned they are. The folks in DC are decades behind the curve on technology in particular. They got rid of the Office of Technology Assessment in 1995. Congress has literally had zero input on technology issues for 24 years, aside from the tech companies themselves. And you can guess what the tech companies have been telling them. So these are the changes that we have to make to rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy to work for us, to work for you. If you're a young person and you feel like it's not working for you, you're right, it is not working for you. If you were born in the 1940s in the United States of America, there was a 93% chance you were gonna do better than your parents. That's the American dream. That's the American dream that drew my parents here. If you were born in the 1990s, which is some of you, you're down to a 50-50 shot, and the number is declining quick. That's why young people in particular feel like we've left you an economy that doesn't work for you, a mess in addition to climate change. And we have. If you're a young person and you feel distressed or angry about it, I get it. We owe you better. We have to do better for you. We have to start measuring how our economy is doing based upon how you all are doing to see how it's working. Again, corporate profits at record highs while our life expectancy is declining. Which is more important? Yes, I agree. And if you think about how we're measuring the value that we're producing, my wife is at home with our 2 young boys, one of whom is autistic. What is her work included at in our economic measures? 0. And we know that's nonsense. We know the work she's doing is among the most challenging and important work that anyone does. It's not just her work. The things that we value most are progressively getting zeroed out in American life. It's parenting, yes, nurturing, caregiving, volunteering, mentoring, coaching, increasingly arts, increasingly journalism, and our market is going to systematically undervalue the work done by women and underrepresented minorities in particular. We all know that women do more of the unrecognized and uncompensated work in our society every single day. So by properly measuring our progress, we can actually see the depth of the problems and then start working to improve on them. So if GDP is this phantom measurement that has less and less relationship with how we're doing, and even its inventor said 100 years ago, this is a terrible measurement of national well-being and we should never use it as that. What would a measurement that actually measures how you and your family are doing look like? Like, what would that measurement be?
Clean air.
Yeah, you could. You could do something around civic engagement. How about mental health and freedom from substance abuse? How about health and life expectancy? Ability to retire with dignity? Clean air and clean water? We can actually make these the measurements of our society. And as your president, that's exactly what I'll do. I'll say GDP is 100 years old. It's time for an upgrade. It's past overdue. And here's how we will measure our progress now. And then we would see we're in a mental health crisis. We would see we're in a wellness recession. We would see that our environment is getting worse and worse, and it's not included in our current numbers. How many of you all have run a business or organization or department or division? Imagine if you had the wrong measurements for that organization. How would it do over time? That is where we are right now as a country. We're getting beaten over the head with GDP, headline unemployment, and stock market prices, and none of those things has much of a relationship with how we're actually doing. GDP, I talked about a little bit. Stock market prices, the bottom 80% of Americans own 8% of stock market wealth. The bottom 50% own essentially 0. Stock market prices correspond to the top 20% of society if you're generous. And headline unemployment doesn't include the fact that millions are dropping out of the workforce, that people are doing 2 or 3 jobs to get by, and that 40% of recent college grads are doing a job that doesn't require a college degree. So if we get the measurements right, we can actually make progress. Donald Trump said in 2016 he was going to make America great again. And what did Hillary Clinton say in response? America's already great. You remember that, New Hampshire? It has been a long several years. I know. We have to acknowledge that the problems are real and that they are deep in our communities, but we need solutions that would actually help people and move us forward. What were Donald Trump's solutions? Going to build a wall, going to turn the clock back, going to bring the old jobs back. New Hampshire, we have to do the opposite of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society as quickly as possible to rise to the real challenges of this era. We have to evolve in the way we think about ourselves and our work and our value. And I am the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you very much, Nashua. Thank you. Math is an acronym. What does it stand for?
Make America think harder.
Make America think harder. That's right. That is your job. You're going to help us move the country, not left, not right, but forward. Thank you very, very much. We're going to be celebrating New Year's here in Nashua. I hope you knew that. It's a giant party. Why did they say it? Oh, thank you.
So I don't know if this one's still on or not, but can you all hear me? I'll try to project. I'll use my mom voice and everyone will recognize that. So I've got a couple of questions I want to ask to start off and then we'll look to the audience. So just as a prep for that, if you do have a question and you can use the mic that's right there that Samantha is pointing to, and as you get up to ask your question, if you could state your name and if you are with an organization or a business that as well before you ask your question. So let me start off. So you talked a bit about jobs going away because of artificial intelligence and different kinds of automation and things like that. But here in New Hampshire, we're actually seeing the opposite of that. We have thousands of jobs left unfilled right now because employers can't find sufficient skilled workers to fill those jobs. How does your economic plan and your educational taxes, both of those, how do those policies help business owners who right now can't be as successful as they could be because they don't have the people to fill jobs?
Yeah, a lot of it does revolve around education, and many of the employers that are looking for workers are trying to find skilled technical workers, tradespeople. We have a massive national shortage of tower climbers and HVAC repair people and people that actually work on the guts of our infrastructure. There are other types of needs and gaps too, but I'm going to talk about these technical jobs because I think it's just such a massive opportunity. Only 6% of American high school students are in technical or trade or apprenticeship programs right now. In Germany, that's 59%. Think about that gulf. And we are lagging behind because many of the employers are looking around saying, I need someone with this sort of training. So we have to get that 6% up as quickly as possible. And this has the added benefit of being able to say to our young people that college is not the end-all be-all for everyone. Only 33% of Americans will graduate from college. And again, we've made it more and more expensive. What we have to do is create paths forward for different students in different areas and lead them to the opportunities that need to be filled in many, many communities. I'll also suggest that a lot of the people that are looking to hire too, and like the headline unemployment rate, it really does obscure a lot of weakness that I see when I talk to folks here in New Hampshire. Because if you're doing multiple jobs to make ends meet, you count as employed. If you're underemployed, you count as employed. And if you leave the workforce and stop looking because of a health problem or you're taking care of a relative, you don't get included in that number. So there's a lot of weakness that's being obscured in our communities because we're using a measurement that's way out of date and misleading.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up also on your freedom dividend plan. So $1,000 a month, not having to do anything for it, sounds pretty good to a lot of people. So I did a little bit of simple math, and I will admit up front, political science major math is not necessarily my strong point, different math than that math. But there are a little over 209 million Americans who would qualify for that at $12,000 a year, meaning over $2.5 trillion a year to fund that. How does the math actually work that you can tax whatever corporations you want to tax to come up with that additional revenue every year? Right.
I'm so glad you asked. I love it so much. So first, you have to look at who the biggest winners are going to be. If you have Amazon, Google, Facebook systematically paying zero or near zero in taxes, then of course you're going to have problems affording things. But if you put a mechanism in place where we all get even the tiniest slice, our fair share of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, eventually every robot truck mile and AI work unit generates $800 billion a year with a giant up arrow attached to it. So that number is going to shoot up. Now, 800 billion is not 2.4 trillion, as you suggest. But after you put the money into our hands, the money doesn't disappear. It circulates through our community and our businesses over and over again. Ends up increasing tax revenue by conservatively, let's call it 600 billion or so. Then here's where the magic comes in. You save an additional hundreds of billions on things like incarceration, homelessness services, emergency room healthcare that we spend almost $1 trillion on now. And it was right here in New Hampshire where a corrections officer said this to me. He said we should pay people to stay out of jail because he sees how expensive it is when they're in jail. This is what happens in our society. We don't invest in people and we end up paying in much more expensive and punitive ways when they hit our institutions because we know our institutions are incredibly expensive. And the last piece, the best piece, is that one study showed that if you were to alleviate poverty in this way, you would increase our GDP by $700 billion a year just on the basis of better health and educational outcomes of our people. This is a massive investment in human capital. And this doesn't even take into account the catalyst for entrepreneurship and creativity and value creation that would ensue, but having a population that can actually afford to take some risks and not feeling like if they fail, then it's going to mean the difference between having a home and not.
I'm going to ask one more, and then I'm going to open it up to all of you guys so you have a chance to ask. But so, in essence, right now, you're in college with the American people for a very important job, the leadership position, the CEO of all CEOs. As someone who's hired many and perhaps fired people in their life, what's your advice to the American people as they compare and consider all of the candidates? So what should they be thinking about as they check off your qualifications and those of others to make sure they make the right choice to fill this critical position?
I love this question so much, I've never gotten it. I love it.
That's kudos to Samantha from the chamber. Whose question that was.
To me, the most important thing about who we choose as our president is whether they understand the real problems on the ground as we're experiencing them, and then can actually bring solutions to bear to solve them and improve our way of life. I'm going to suggest to you all that technology is the driving force behind many changes in our economy and society, and that most of the other figures in this race, whom I like and admire a great deal, and I consider many of them friends, but many of them do not understand technology very well. And they also do not understand technology's intersection with the labor force very well at all. That if we have the wrong person in that seat, we're going to have another 4 years of your malls closing, of AI getting smarter, of the robot trucks starting to multiply on the highways. And that as this continues, it's going to get harder and harder for us to actually put in place a path that lets Americans know that we are not going to be left behind, that we're actually the owners and shareholders of this country and not inputs into a giant capital efficiency machine. If you don't understand the real problems, you're not going to be able to solve them. And I believe I have a much clearer understanding of what lies ahead for this country.
Thank you very much. I'm going to shift to all of you now. So I see I've got a line going. If you do have a question, so we've got probably about 15 minutes for questions from all of you. Again, if you could state your name, and if you're affiliated with a business or organization, let us know that as well, and then you're welcome to ask your question.
I'm Will Bronson. I drove down from Maine today. I'm the president of Enlightened Education Co-op, which is based in Florida. My question is, this is a follow-on to the guaranteed universal basic income. The rationale for that, obviously, is to deal with the dislocation that will come from increase in AI and robotics and automation. But there's an equally strong justification for it, in my view, and I wonder if you comment on it. According to Stephanie Sepeli, the MIT scientist, she's come up with a scary statistic because of the exponential rise in autism. And she claims that within 10 years, every other family will be dealing with a child with the autism spectrum. This will take a terrific amount of resources to provide for homeowners, who typically caretakers in the home that actually debate and have spoken to this on one of the occasions. But could you comment on this as a possible other justification, reason, rationale for the freedom dividend, which I like to call tech dividend?
All right. Thank you for this question. These are the best questions I've received in quite some time. I have a son on the autism spectrum, and what I say to families around the country is that special needs is the new normal. Certainly, I have not seen a study that suggests it's going to get up to 50%, but it's already normal in many millions of families around the country. And the big problem here is that you have a special needs child like my son who shows up at school, and the school says I don't have the resources available to actually do what this child needs and requires because I have one teacher for 20 kids and I don't have the budget for this. And so that child ends up falling through the cracks, the family has to scramble, there are massive problems. But it's in large part because, again, we're confusing economic value and human value. We're saying that this kid needs more and thus is a burden on the community, instead of seeing it the way we should be, which is that our kids' well-being is the point of the economy. We should use that as a measuring stick, which incidentally means you pay teachers more, you hire more teachers, you lighten up on the standardized tests that We devised during World War II as a means to identify which kids not to send to the front lines, and now we're just bludgeoning our kids with them and distorting teacher behavior. You stop treating your schools like assembly lines and start actually trying to put the resource in place to give our kids what they need. If you change it from this cost model to this investment model, then you see that this is the future of the 21st century economy, making ourselves stronger, healthier, and more whole. And if we don't evolve in that direction as quickly as possible, then you're correct that many communities will feel themselves to be overwhelmed by the cost of supporting many special needs children who, quite frankly, are going to grow to become special needs adults. And if we don't start changing the measuring stick, then we're going to see these people as, again, cost centers and burdens instead of being owners and parts of our families. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Hello, Guy from Executive Intelligence Review. I'm from Massachusetts. Speaking about making Americans think harder, we need a national science driver program to lift up the population economically and inspire the population. But we have a couple major problems to solve first. Number one, you were talking about your friends who went down to Wall Street with the derivatives and stuff. Well, since 2008, the big banks are much bigger and about to blow out. The Federal Reserve has been giving them $100 million a day since September, which means we're close to a very big blowout again. Okay, we have HR 2176 in the House. Everyone should be calling their reps and demand it passes and becomes law. And last one is we have to get back to economic sovereignty. In other words, we don't need an independent private entity controlling our economy. We're over $20 trillion in debt. So we have to get back away with Federal Reserve, fixed currency, and get back to the American system.
This was a very profound question. So some people, when they come to an event, one of the thoughts is what Tracy originally asked, is like, where do we get the money to do what we need to do? How many of you here remember voting for the $4 trillion bailout of Wall Street? How many of you remember anyone saying, where are we going to get the money? That's what he's talking about, this printing of hundreds of millions of dollars a day to shore up the balance sheets of our banks. No one voted for that. No one said, yeah, let's do that instead of bailing out homeowners. I mean, to me, the obvious choice was to bail out homeowners and keep people in their homes, keep communities whole. But instead, we chose to recapitalize the banks. And that is an emblem of the choices we're making in this country. Everything revolves around the almighty dollar and our institutions, and we don't trust our people in the least. We have to choose our people. And to your point about what we've done in terms of recapping Wall Street and privileging them, you're right. The banks are now bigger than ever. They're absorbing more and more of the financial activity. Community banks in places like New Hampshire are a thing of the past. If you're old enough and you remember being here, you remember there are community banks here that likely got gobbled up by Bank of America and the gang. So this is what we have to, again, counteract. We have to choose our people instead of the banks. And we do have to stop bailing out Wall Street and letting them run and own our economy in this way. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. HR 2176.
In the interest of time, because I think we could probably get 2 more questions in, if you could keep your questions a little succinct, that would help us get more people to ask the questions.
Mr. Yang, thanks for coming. My name is Joe. I'm a college student from Worcester, Mass. So my question today is based on the dividend that you're talking about. Now, of course, I know what you want to do with putting taxes on different companies such as Amazon, Facebook, and things like. But my question is, how can you prevent these companies from outsourcing themselves into other countries to avoid such the removal of such tax rates?
Sure, so this is based upon a system that's in effect in just about every other developed country. And it occurs at the point of sale. We're the #1 market in the country, or the world. So even if Amazon were to shift some of its offices to other places, they're paying at the point of sale, so they pay it no matter what. This is what other countries have figured out. Other countries have said that having the Amazons of the world pay 0 taxes is untenable. And it's worked everywhere else, it would work here too. Because you're right, companies will do anything necessary to try and save money, but this is, because it's a point of sale, it's very, very hard to escape. It's impossible to escape, actually. The comparison I use is that Jeff Bezos right now is worth about $109 billion post-divorce. If you were to ratchet up the tax rate, let's say to 75%, 80%, how much of his $109 billion do you get? Next to nothing, because he's not dumb enough to pay himself $5 billion a year. You know, he pays himself something modest, and then most of his wealth is tied up in Amazon stock. So what you do is, like Willie Sutton, the bank robber, why do I rob the banks? Because that's where the money is. The money's flowing into Amazon, so you take it at the point of sale there, then you get billions from his business, and then when Jeff takes $1 billion out of his stock every year to buy rocket ships to Mars, which is what he does with his money, then you take a toll there too. You make it so that you get it coming and going, and then it ends up in our hands to make our families and communities stronger. But because it's at the point of sale, it doesn't matter where they base their operations.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Hi, my name is Kurt. I'm a campaign supporter from Massachusetts.
I can tell by the shirt. Thank you, Kurt.
Yeah, I'm going to head to Iowa also for you.
Yes! Or you can just stay here in New Hampshire, either way. I mean, no, you can vote. Look at Iowa and then come on over, yeah.
So, it might be time to put some minds at ease about healthcare. This phrase, Medicare for all, it's become this sort of political football. It's almost a branded phrase at this point. To what extent are you anchored specifically and explicitly to Medicare for all, as it's written as a phrase? And to what extent would universal healthcare be a more useful phrase?
I like where your head's at, Kurt. To me, Medicare for all is universal healthcare for all Americans. It's not the name of a bill. It's a name for trying to get every American healthcare independent of their work status or whether or not they can afford certain levels of premiums. Now, I'm not someone who thinks you can uproot private insurance plans quickly, because you're talking about millions of Americans on these plans. In some cases, they actually negotiated away higher salaries for the plans. So somehow legislating those out of existence very quickly seems to me to be unduly impractical / disruptive. So the plan to me should be for the government to provide a public coverage option that then outcompetes the private insurers and squeezes them out over time. Now, to your point, Kurt, it is true Medicare for all means certain things to certain people, and you're probably right that universal health care would be a better way to frame it.
Good afternoon. Make Americans think harder. I would challenge you to think harder, to look for chess moves that reduce the size of government and make it a freer country, such as if a state legislature says no more zoning restrictions in any city or town, immediately there would be an abundance of new jobs in demolition and construction. And with the glut of housing meeting the modern code, there would immediately be landlords scrambling to find tenants for half the rents that they're paying now, more people waiting at each bus stop. The bus companies could extend their hours and their routes, and people wouldn't have to pay for a parking lot when they don't even have a car.
This man strikes me as so new. What's your name, sir? Where are you from?
My name is Tom Alcier. I used to be a state rep here briefly many years ago.
And are you from here in New Hampshire?
I live in Hudson, New Hampshire now.
Because I was going to comment that you sounded and felt so New Hampshire to me. There was such this, libertarian element to this idea, and I'm sympathetic toward many aspects of it. We do have to lighten up on some of the restrictions on development. A lot of the restrictions are NIMBYism, where it's just saying not in my backyard, affordable housing is good in the abstract, but not here because I don't want it to depress my home's values. And big picture in terms of the federal government, Donald Trump said he wanted to drain the swamp. In many ways, he was not wrong. Again, it's the richest city in our country. And what are they producing? Unclear. So he said he wanted to drain the swamp. I want to distribute the swamp. Why would you have tens of thousands of employees and buildings in the most expensive city in the country? You should be moving those agencies to Ohio or Michigan or New Hampshire or Florida, or a place that would actually love to have that economic activity. The cost would be much lower because everything's cheaper in these places. And I would argue the decisions would be better because they would actually be tied to our communities and make decisions not from the bubble of DC, but from an actual place where other people are working and living relatively normal lives. So I'm sympathetic to much of what you're describing, and I do think that zoning regs are standing in the way of a lot of the affordable housing development that you're seeking. I like his sweater too. Look at that. No, show them. Yes.
www.shopyang2020.com. But Mr. Yang, I was at your Hanover Town Hall event about a month ago, and just a quick disclaimer, this could be a little bit long, but I'll get this as short as possible, because this is the best way that I can get my message out to people. But, and I think this would encapsulate what we're kind of all thinking. So, Mr. Yang, there's not been a poll in an early state released in 47 days. Tom Perez, the chairman of the DNC, just rejected your request for the DNC to conduct and release more early state polls, essentially cutting off a vital pathway to the January debate. On Perez's Twitter biography, he writes, and I quote, likes the Buffalo Bills, the Democrats, and fighting for the little guy, though not in that order. Well, apparently he doesn't like fighting for the little guy who has over $400,000, including some here right now in New Hampshire, which would, you look at that, is an early state. So, to the people in the room, we have a chance to outraise Elizabeth Warren in the fourth quarter. And I'm going to look towards kind of the biggest camera in the room, but if there's someone from the DNC watching, oh shoot, where am I? If there's someone from the DNC watching, look at the crowd. We've crammed over 100 people into a room built for 30. There are people watching from out the door. Poll the people is my point. I cannot even vote in the 2020 general election, but I'm the most passionate about this than anything I have in a long time.
Hold the give me a high five, man. So Tom Perez, fight for the little guy, fight for all the little guys in this room. Fight for the American people. Poll the people. Poll the people.
Poll the people.
We're not going to get much help in this process. So that to the people over 18 years old, keep phone banking, keep canvassing, keep yanging people, keep making America think harder, because we all know it's not left, it's not right, it's forward. And I'm a part of the Yang Gang because I'm scared of the future in America. And in my age group, I am not alone. So Mr. Yang, do you have any thoughts on the issue? You're making me feel better about the future, Ellis, just by being so passionate and articulate. Awesome leadership on your part. I believe we're going to get the polls we need in the right time frame, and I'll be on that debate stage in January. What is the #1 criteria for Democratic voters for the nominee? Beating Donald Trump, that's right. And a poll right here in New Hampshire said that 10% of Donald Trump voters would support me over Donald Trump in the general election. Another poll said that 18% of college Republicans would choose me over Trump. Unlike any of the other candidates in the field, I am drawing in disaffected Trump voters, libertarians, and independents, as well as Democrats and progressives. I am the best candidate to take Donald Trump on and beat him. That's why as soon as they poll New Hampshire and Iowa, we'll see that we're well above the DNC's threshold. And I will say, I'm very confident we're going to make the debate stage. We've actually offered to the DNC to pay for the polls because they were complaining about cost, and I was like, we'll pay for it. So we'll make that debate stage in January, but more importantly, this campaign is going to keep growing and growing because we are talking about the issues that Americans care about and the problems that we see around us every day. Really, Ellis, man, you really are an inspiration to me. Like, thank you so much. And he's also a poster child for the reason why I believe we should lower the voting age to 16. Yes. And hear me out on this. Some of you are like, that seems aggressive. But 16-year-olds can pay taxes. If you had 16-year-olds being able to vote, it would transform every high school in the country into a political hotbed instead of something that's like, oh, we don't talk about it. No, you can actually vote. Studies have shown that the earlier your first vote is, the more likely you are to vote throughout your life. And frankly, you're going to be here longer. You should have a say in what's going on. The main counter-argument to this is that 16-year-olds are too immature and ill-informed to vote. And I think Ellis just proved that to be nonsense. Am I right? Thank you, brother. Let's wait it out for you.
less than $1 million to the $3 million Q4 fundraising goal. So keep donating. We gotta make it.
What a plans! That's a passionate young person here in New Hampshire.
So my apologies to those of you who didn't quite get a chance to get your question in. Thank you for coming out. Again, I'll add my own personal thanks to those of you like Ellis who are younger voters taking the opportunity to get yourselves educated, all of you coming out. Whether Mr. Yang is your candidate or you're still on the fence for or supporting the other candidate, just wanted to hear what you had to say. You all, your participation in the process helps make it a stronger and better process for all of us. So really, thank you. Particularly thank you to you, Mr. Yang. A pleasure for sharing your time, for answering our questions, and sharing your positions. Maybe a little pointed. Again, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, Riviera University, the Telegraph, our host sponsor, the National Public Library, and our corporate sponsor, Fidelity Investments, thank you all very much for coming. So line up around here for a photo. I'm going to take the first one.
Yes.
Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
We're gonna have to because. Scooch. I'm squished over here. You squished me out.
What y'all think? We thought it was a pretty good Q&A session right there.
Did y'all enjoy Ellis's question?
Ellis, that was the guy that came by here earlier and was talking to us. Remember, if y'all go back a little bit and right before Yang started talking, he came by here and talked to us for a minute.
Really cool kid, right?
He's really cool. Perfect, like he said, that's a perfect reason to lower the voting age to 16. I mean, you think about it, man. Like my nephew, Nicholas is 15?
Yes.
15, shout out to you, Nicholas. But he's like politically engaged and he likes Andrew Yang. And I mean, it's just amazing to see, you know, all these young people who are so passionate about their country. Because quite honestly, I mean, y'all, we've been leaving them a shit world for how long now? And it's time we tighten up. And it's time that we take an interest in not just our future, but their future. Because they're the ones that are going to be left with this world. So it's up to us. What kind of future do you want to leave your kids? You know, that's why we're here fighting every day for Andrew Yang in New Hampshire. And in South Carolina, and every place that we can get to for y'all. So if you're new here, please like, share, subscribe. Donation links are in the descriptions of our other videos.
I'll put it in this one too when it uploads.
Yeah, they'll be in this one too once it uploads. We appreciate it, Yang Gang. Thanks for watching so much. We've got another live stream event coming for y'all. We've got a long way to go and a short time to get there. So we are going to probably sign off of here, maybe try to get some footage, some after.
They're doing a media thing up there. Can't we
after
go up
footage.
there?
I don't want to go up there with the media type. We don't fit in. No, we don't. They look at us like we are.
We're special media.
Special needs me.
I cannot believe you just said that.
Hey, brother, how are you?
Going all right? I've seen you guys since Basic Income March.
I'm telling you, but well, we've been around.
Yeah.
We've been here in New Hampshire, and then we went down to South Carolina for a minute.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
So are you going to?
I'm going to the party tomorrow.
Awesome.
Cool.
You gonna be
there
at the
too.
events later today?
No, not the other later events today.
Well, we'll see you at the party for sure.
Be safe. Be safe.
Zach and Matt getting over 1,000 views on the live stream. Yeah, well, we're not Zach and Matt. We can't help it. We'll take y'all. We love y'all.
And y'all know that us live streaming everything in New Hampshire has kind of been our thing for a while now. So thank y'all that are here watching. You know, it's going to make it a little harder when there's more. Yes, we're all on the same side. We're all Yang Gang, right?
For sure.
But
we are all on the same side. And it's just more coverage for Andrew Yang. So, I mean, we don't mind if y'all watch Zach and Matt or y'all watch us. We're a little bit country over here on this side of the tracks. So, you might see goats and stuff over here on this channel. So, well, that's good. That's good. Well, we will be at the next event. And Zach and Matt had this live stream uploaded yesterday.
Yeah.
Go check out their live stream that was uploaded yesterday for the event that's coming up this afternoon.
Yeah. The point I was trying to get to is that we're like the little people, so we're like the underdog right now of the Yang Gang YouTube.
And you know what's crazy?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben Vic.
Yeah, thank you.
It's very, very much appreciated. And
So if you like the underdog, then you finish my thought.
Okay.
If
Don't
you
lose
like
your
the
word.
if you like the underdog, watch our live streams. It is what we do, and if we didn't live stream, we don't know what we would do during the Yang event.
one step
you know?
that way, and
I
I'll
don't
get
know.
a good shot of it.
We are definitely prettier than Zach and Matt.
I'll take it.
I mean, maybe we are. They're pretty too.
I don't really watch their channel. I don't have time.
Look, I mean, I don't know. We are what we are, and we're OG Yang Gang now. I mean, we're about as old as they come as far as
Old? You just call me old?
We're old. We are getting kind of old.
Thank you, Gavin.
We appreciate you, Gavin. Thank you so much. I'm glad y'all like the country. Yangercrats. Let's go, baby.
You totally coined that term. Definitely. The first one to use Yangercrat.
I'm glad to see people get some use out of it, though. 'Cause,
It makes sense.
That's what we are. We're Yangercrats. We are not vote blue no matter who. Sorry. We're voting for. Actually, we are vote blue no matter who.
Because Andrew Yang's going to get the nomination.
Well, and if he doesn't get the nomination, we're writing him in anyway. So we are still voting blue no matter who.
That's true.
It's just an establishment Democrat will not get our vote. So, we love you, Yang Gang. We're going to see you. What time is the next one, Mama?
4:30.
4:30. So we will be live at 4 o'clock, hopefully.
We'll see
Y'all, I
how
gotta
the
get
roads are.
something to eat. I'm hungry.
I know, me
I haven't
too.
eaten today.
I might
Been
be
up
always
since 6:30. Y'all, we've been on the move. Weather out here is frightful.
Eastern, yes.
But the fire is so delightful. If you have no place to go, just let it snow. Let it snow. Let it snow. That's all it is.
Never do that again.
We love you, Yang Gang.
Don't do that.